All right, am I recording? I don't know if I am or not. So I guess I'm recording. Let me get this stuff out of here. Let me get it down on the bottom. Okay, I think I'm recording. With this particular video, this is John Tinney. I'm doing my Excel 3 video for Miss Benzie's quantitative literacy class. It took me quite a while to get this stuff all compiled, and I'm doing my best to make it where I will get a good score for this particular class. And we're going to start talking today on scenario 1. Scenario 1 is we had to do a lot of entering on this particular scenario. We're talking about theoretical probability and empirical probability. And theoretical probability is defined as the ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. And say you want to roll snake eyes with 2 dice, which means 2 ones. The theoretical probability says you have 1 in 6 chance with each die. And looking at the charts and graphs that we've compiled, you can see the probability of that happening. It's not very good. More than likely, looking at the theoretical and empirical charts, you're going to roll a combination of 7. That's the most common roll. Empirical probability has to do with experiments. We had to do experiments on this thing all the way up to 6,000 things that we had to scroll down on this machine to make it. We had to go 6, 60, 600, and 6,000. And what that tried to show us was the law of large numbers and how that it made graphs that was more like a bell-shaped curve like all the other graphs that we've done. And if you can look over here to the left a little bit, to the right, I'm sorry, of my thing, you can see how long that these different data compilations are, and then it shows the different graphs that I've made. The first 2 graphs show that it's just there's only 6 rolls of the die, so it's not that much information for them. The second set of graphs shows, a roll of 60 rolls, and it shows a little bit more. It's starting to take a little bit of a shape. The third row is 600, and it's got a pretty good shape. And then the last roll of 6,000, there's a real good shape of showing how that the most everything is going to be in the middle. It's going to be pretty much the average of everything in the middle. And it was pretty interesting to do this. It took a lot of work, but it was pretty interesting to do this, and to try to put all these things together. And in our everyday life, do we use this? Yeah, I guess we use it a little bit. It seems like, we use it if we're trying to be a person that likes to buy lottery tickets or for a gambler or anything like that. Or actually, I guess, if you take a drive to work, are you going to arrive safely? More than likely the average is you're going to arrive safely and there's not going to be a bad result. But it's kind of interesting that this is part of our life nowadays. And we'll go on now to scenario 2. Scenario 2 has to do with binomial probabilities. This is something. It was another one that was kind of tough for me to get my head around. But a binomial probability means there's going to be a fixed number of trials. Each trial is going to be independent of the others. There's only going to be 2 outcomes. There's going to be heads or tails. There's going to be yes or no. And the probability of each outcome will remain constant from trial to trial. I use these charts here that we had in doing my math work here earlier. I had to put some numbers in there, and just putting the numbers in helped make it work for the math homework. There's only 2 outcomes on the binomial, as I said. There's with a normal distribution thing, there can be a number of different outcomes. Binomial has a fixed set of rules. It's listed in one of the charts. The classmate on the outcome of selling the lottery tickets, he is going to, the lottery people are going to make money, or the ticket sellers are going to make money. The classmate, as a rule, that buys them is actually going to lose money most of the time. The odds and the probabilities are always against the classmate, and they're for the lottery people, so just like Oakland, I tell people all the time going into Oakland that, hey man, what's the best horse to bet on? And I'll always tell them, hey, it's best to not even go in there. Some of the charts that we came up here and showed that we had the revenues for the Arkansas, the 18.4% of the revenues go to education in Arkansas. Some of the states that I looked up, like Louisiana, I think Louisiana, they have a commission, and all the money goes into the commission for Louisiana. They split it up however they want to. It's not really earmarked just for education. It goes into a number of different things. And I think in Texas, they have a school fund that uses like 27% of their monies that go into education and that type of thing. It's not just higher education in Texas, it's all education. Arkansas, it's mainly for higher education for scholarships. We're going to number 3, and this talks about American Body Mass Index and where did we rank on this. We had a number of different things. The BMI is an acronym for Body Mass Index. It's a measure of body size. Measures a person's height and weight. The internet has numerous BMI calculators, and the confidence interval on each set of data is the first 2 places from the mean, both to the left, which is the negative, and to the right, which is the positive. The meaning of our z-scores in this formula, which would be the BMI mean divided by the standard deviation in this application. In order to come up with these graphs, you have to know what the mean is and the standard deviation. You have to have these values to arrive at your z-score. The confidence intervals are derived from the way the data is presented after the chart is compiled. Once you get it all made together and everything else, you can see the 34%, I think it's 34.1% and 13.6% on either side is the one that makes the difference on the, you can be confident that some things, you're going to land in those areas, or the majority of the folks are. If you're an American, you have a 65% probability that you'll have a healthy BMI score. If you live in 7 states, Arkansas being one of them, you'll have a 35% probability that you'll have an unhealthy BMI. The worst state is Virginia. They are 38.1 adult obesity rate. So here in Arkansas, we have a 35%. And I think I've compiled charts here that show all of this. I asked my wife, what her height and weight was, where I could figure out her BMI. And you can see this little yellow line here on the BMI for women is my wife. She's pretty close to the normal. I think she was a 0.27. Myself, I'm a 33. I'm always been a stout guy and everything else. And so my height and weight is kind of misleading, really. But I mean, I don't know. I'm a little fat, so I'm not going to say anything else. And I asked my son what his weights were and his heights and everything else, and his BMI was only 21. Because he's kind of a beanpole. He's real lanky and everything else, and so he's doing real good. He only had, I think there's 19% of people would be lower than him. 79% of the folks around would be higher than him. My BMI, it looked like there was 84.6% people would be lower than me, and then 15.4 would be higher than me. My wife is kind of in the middle, with 49 lower and 51 higher. Miss Benzie had us get this chart together, and we had to put these different numbers and everything to get as close as we could to where we were, and it's in here in the machine in the report for us. If we can look over here, you can see the guys. This is my son's and mine. My son was, like I said, he was a 21, and so I've got him. His BMI, I may have it, the Z-score may be in a little bit the wrong place, but he was about, let's see what I say, he was a 19% would have a lower BMI than him. So that's going, I probably need to move his BMI just a little bit, because I've got it probably the wrong place, and then mine is probably a little bit higher than it should be. I've got it at 33. So I probably got mine just a little off on where mine is. It probably shouldn't be all the way over there, maybe a little more than half, but I think I've got them pretty close to where they ought to be. And then you can look at all the numbers that I've compiled over here. This is what made our chart and our bell curve and our Z curve and everything else on this for the where we rank on the American Body Mass Index. We'll go on to scenario number 4 now. This talks about simple and compound interest rates on loans, and actually would work on if you was trying to save money also. But I tried to use this chart on some of the questions on my math index on our Connect Math, and I just could never make it come out like I wanted to. And I had a couple of questions on there that I just could not figure out. But with these formulas that we have here, the formulas that are in there, and then we punch all these things into these charts and put all these numbers and everything in there with the parentheses and all the other good stuff that goes with it, you can finally get to something that you can work with here. Interest is a good thing, I think, because banks have to have it to keep in business, and then we have to be able to collect interest on any of our monies in order for us to make more money. Whether it be we're investing in savings bonds or whatever, we need to be able to be paid money for our money so that our money can grow for us. And interest is a fee that banks and other institutions either pay or collect when somebody is using the money. If you save or invest your money in that institution, they pay you a fee so that they can use your money for whatever length of time. When you need money, like if you're going to buy a car or you're going to buy a house or anything like that, you go to the institution and you make a deal on the best interest rate you can make. And most time it's always compound interest that we're dealing with. We very seldom, whenever we deal with a savings and loan company or anything like that, deal with simple interest. Most of the time it's always compound interest. They don't, it's just every day you have a little more interest either that you owe or that you get paid. If you look at this bottom chart here to the left, it talks about paying monthly payments, paying a little extra. Right here, right above where we're at here, talk about if you paid a little bit extra on it. One of the 20-year loan, I don't remember what the interest rate was, but if you paid just the regular payments, you'd pay $174,000 in $174,470, and you'd pay over $6,400 or $64,000 in interest. If you paid just $50 extra a month, you'd pay about $8,000 less, and you'd save about $8,000 on interest. If you went ahead and paid $100 more, you'd save almost $13,000 on total paid back, and you'd save about $14,000 on interest, about $13,500 on interest. So it's worth it if you can pay a little extra. I pay on my cars and everything I've ever bought. I've always paid more than what I owe, more than the monthly payment, because it just helps chisel that things down quickly. It's talking about subsidized and unsubsidized loans for, for us in college and everything else. I've been fortunate the city of Hot Spring pays my tuition. I have to pay for my books, but if I had to borrow money, it'd be nice to have it, and especially I probably want it on a subsidized type loan where I wouldn't have to pay interest the whole time. And this is kind of broken down for us how that works. If you borrowed $12,000 right out of the gate, subsidized, you would end up only owing $14,000 whenever you paid it back with a monthly payment of $118.66. An unsubsidized loan, the interest starts accruing on that loan the minute you get it, and so at the end of when the term is, you'd end up paying $15,734. So the pro of paying interest is you get to have what you want right now. Like if you have to borrow money to get a car or a motorcycle or a four-wheeler or anything like that, you can get it right this minute, and you just have to pay a fee to do that. The con is that you have to pay to use that person's money over time. You are indebted, you owe that money back, and so in essence, you become a slave. And I mean, you don't want to be a slave to the dollar bill. So in order to help minimize the amount of interest and everything you have to pay over time, pay extra as you're going along, and it'll help you where your money's will get paid off quicker, and you will not be a slave as long. All right, let's move on to scenario 5. Scenario 5 talks about gathering data from populations and samples. One of the things it talked about here was we're having President Trump's approval ratings. It shows we have over, the population there is huge compared, it's looking like it's 7 billion, over 7 billion. And you've got 1 billion Republicans, you have 3 billion independents, and you have 2 billion, that doesn't sound right, but maybe that's right. Almost 2.7 billion Democrats in the United States. It shows that there's the approval rating for President Trump among Republicans is 87%. They really like him. They like what he's doing. There's only 12% of Republicans disapprove of President Trump. When you go to the independents, there's 34% that approve of what he's doing, and 63% disapprove of what he's doing. And the Democrats are really the ones that hate him. They only have 8% of Democrats approve of Donald Trump, and with over 90% that disapprove of him. And they're the ones that are the most vocal and the ones that talk about how bad and how terrible he is and how sorry of a job he's doing. I've written a note here somewhere about this. Is, random sampling is just what the name implies. All the elements you can see equal and have an equal chance of being selected. Stratified is when the population is divided into subpopulations or stratums, and the subjects are selected randomly. The 25 voter thing and the random rolls of the dice basically is what we did with those. Volunteer sampling wouldn't necessarily be the most accurate. If they volunteer, they may have a bias in the first place, whatever the question or whatever you want to find out. And a convenient sampling is, it would probably work, but it probably wouldn't be that great. And if you look at these different graphs that we've compiled here, the pie charts show about how many people approve of the president or don't. It shows about the political parties that were polled. This bottom couple of graphs we have here in this information is about the number of men and women that are in the U.S. military. It kind of shows with these different graphs and these bar graphs how that the number of men against the number of women, and it shows in the Marines here would be the 90, the most of them are men, very few are women. Air Force is pretty close. Army is, of course, not. Certainly has a lot more men than women, and that's just the way life is. There's a lot of women that are not interested in being in the military. There's a lot of men that they grow up and that's all they can dream of is being a soldier, being a Marine, or being a airplane pilot or that type of thing. And so it's just kind of it seems like it's just the way that we're all brought up as life goes on. And short and sweet, we're going to get to scenario number 6. This scenario number 6 I thought was kind of interesting because whenever I went in there and started putting these numbers in and everything, I've done the one, Miss Benzie worked with us right on the first thing, all the 1s, the 2s, 3s, and 4s and everything else. And I came up with this graph and I turned it around, and all of my graphs and pie charts and everything that I've compiled the whole time I've been in this class, I've always done, checked on the rotation and everything else to see where it would make the best sense whenever I was putting my graph on our Excel chart. And to do this with these numbers and everything else, I thought was really interesting. I made this bottom one here myself, and I turned it around different ways and everything else. And it's kind of interesting that, it's got a couple of divots in it. It's got some shiny parts and everything else here, the way it worked. I made all the different things all the way down to the different point, and it was, you can do just about anything with this. I saw some of the artwork and everything else, and I didn't have any idea they did all this with Excel. I know that it's very, very strong program and everything else, but it was kind of interesting to play with this a little bit. It sure is. It's a lot of stuff to enter, but with the results, it's pretty interesting, pretty amazing what you can do. These computer gurus are real good that that can move around this and a whole lot faster than me. It's just amazing what they do. And one of the things that she asked us about is a perspective on things. In my line of work, perspective is just about everything. My perspective is that selling drugs and using drugs is wrong. I mean, I just don't think it's a good thing to do. I mean, we all have to take drugs for our ailments or whatever thing like that. But when we start abusing them and we start stealing from folks, we start driving while we're intoxicated, we start doing all the stuff that people do whenever they're using these substances, that's where I have an issue with it. The people that sell and use these drugs, it's the way they make a living. It's just, that's, to them, hey man, this is life. They grow up with it. There's marijuana, there's drugs and everything else in their house. It's no big deal. There's no moral no about it to them. It's life. But my job, I feel like, is to try to stop that illegal activity. And they think that I'm the bad guy because I'm trying to make the overall good of a society be better by not having those, I feel like there's scourges upon our society, meth and all that kind of stuff. I think it's terrible what it has done to society because of what it does to people, and it'll take great people and destroy them. I mean, completely make them where they do stuff that they don't even realize that they're doing. They feel like that they're just getting by and they have no regard for laws that are put forth for the good of the society. And with all this stuff we have coming on now, marijuana is going to be legalized, or medical marijuana is going to be legalized, and it probably won't be long before all of it is legalized on marijuana. And then, I think it's just opening up a heck of a bag of worms that we don't need to have to deal with in our society. This is going to be my last video for this class. Miss Benzie, you've done a heck of a job. It's been a pleasure working with you. I know I probably wore you out sometimes asking some of the questions I've asked, but a lot of this was really, really a struggle for me to try to wrap my head around because I had never done anything like this. But it's been interesting. I've learned a lot, and especially about the nutrition and things that we've had to learn. And it's kind of interesting that you even care about that, and you're a math teacher. But I can see what it has done for your life, and I see your enthusiasm for trying to pass it along to other people's life. And I know myself, I've tried to start being more healthy over the last few years, and not just because of this class, but because I've got a 14-year-old, or he'll be 14 in June, and I want to hang around a long time for him. I've got an older son and grandbabies, and I've been very fortunate. I'm 60 years old, and I can do what the heck I want to, and I want to keep on doing that. And so that's the reason I'm kind of trying to take a little bit better care of myself. And with that, you rock, I rock, this whole class rock, and I'm done. Thank you.